It is important to place the acts of genocide in the broader context of Israel's conduct towards Palestinians during its 75-year-long apartheid, its 56-year-long belligerent occupation of Palestinian territory, and its 16-year-long blockade of Gaza, including the serious and ongoing violations of international law associated therewith, including grave breaches of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
It was already known that repeated exposure to conflict and violence, including witnessing and experiencing housing demolition, combined with Israel's siege of Gaza since 2007, is associated with high levels of psychological distress amongst Palestinians.
I'm always sick, I don't know. I can't do anything. If you do all of this, what do you expect me to do? Fix it? I'm only 10. I can't even do anything anymore. I just want to be a doctor or anything to help my people, but I can't. I'm just a kid. I don't even know what to do. I get scared, but not really that much. I do anything for my people, but I don't know what to do. I'm just 10. I'm just 10. All of this, when I see, I literally cry every day, saying to myself, why do we deserve this? What did we do to this? My family said they just hate us. They just don't like us because we are Muslims. Why does Muslims act for you like that?
Indeed, the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2712 expressed its deep concern that the disruption of access to education has a dramatic impact on children, and that conflict has a lifelong effect on their physical and mental health. This disruption and its dramatic impact on children must be considered in particular and in the context of the number of Palestinian students and educators who have been killed, 4,037 and 209 respectively, and wounded estimated at 7,259. And the number of Palestinian schools having been damaged or destroyed, 352, or 74% of the schools in the whole of Gaza. Medical professionals assess that the health effects on all Palestinian children, women, men, older people, people with disabilities, and people marginalized identities are immense. An emergency coordinator for Médecins Sans Frontières, interviewed on her return from 5 weeks in Gaza, described, "It's even worse in reality than it looks. The amount of suffering is just something incomparable. It's really unbearable. I'm speechless when I try and think of the future of these children. Generations of children who will be handicapped, who will be traumatized. The very children in our mental health program are telling us they would rather die than continue living in Gaza now."
And like every place I go run away, and I just find bombs and I find dead people, and like maybe one day I'll end up like them, but it's a really scary thing for me.
South Africa is highly cognizant of the fact that acts of genocide are distinct from other violations of international law sanctioned or perpetrated by the Israeli government and military in Gaza, including intentionally directing attacks against the civilian population, civilian objects, and buildings dedicated to religion, education, art, science, historic monuments, hospitals, and places where the sick and wounded are collected.
United Nations chiefs and the International Committee of the Red Cross, no strangers to conflict situations, have called what is unfolding in Gaza a crisis of humanity.
2 weeks ago, breaking. Israel declares war on Gaza. Every time we hear a bomb falling, we ask ourselves, is it our turn? But we see the light of the explosion and we know we are spared this time. But we cry because it's someone else's. Everything is shaking. It's 5:50 a.m. in Gaza and the kids cannot sleep. No one can sleep. Just a couple of hours ago, they bombed a house in Beit Hanun, and 12 people from the same family died under the rubble of their house. This brought the number of people killed to over 300. They also cut electricity. We are using batteries now. We don't want to leave Gaza. We cannot. Our grandparents were expelled from their homes in 1948. We were born in refugee camps. We have been killed and dispossessed of all that we were born with. Sometimes I get the feeling that I should not close my eyes for a moment, that I should not sleep. A poem. Turn off the lights in every room, sit in the inner hallway of the house, away from the windows, stay away from the stove, stop thinking about making tea, have a bottle of water nearby big enough to cool down children's fear. Get a children's kindergarten backpack and stuff tiny toys and whatever amount of money there is, and the ID cards and the photos of late grandparents, aunts and uncles, and the grandparents' wedding invitation that's been kept for so long. And if you're a farmer, you should put some strawberry seeds in one pocket and some soil from the balcony flower pot in the other, and hold on tight to whatever number there was on the cake from the last birthday. I'm alive, but I'm not safe. 30 members of my family were killed last night in Gaza City. They bombed my neighborhood. Whole families. My neighbors are killed. We left our house on Thursday. 2 hours ago, I went back to get some food and clothes. A few minutes ago, they bombed my neighbors. They are dead. We are dead. 1 week ago, yesterday at the Baptist hospital, a father asked how his son was recovering from his wounds. The doctor promised everything was going all right. The father went back an hour later. There was no son, no doctor, no hospital. 4 days ago, we are under the heaviest airstrikes since the escalation began. They are bombing the Jabalia refugee camp. It's all around me and my family. Only God can save us. 2 days ago, at the hospital in Gaza, there are not enough beds. Some children lie on the floor like burnt matches. 1 day ago, heavy bombardment. Children are screaming. It's dark except for the light of explosions. We are hardly alive.
But even if that Hamas commander was there amidst all those Palestinian refugees who are in that Jabalia refugee camp, Israel still went ahead and dropped a bomb there, knowing that a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children, presumably would be killed. Is that what I'm hearing? You knew there were civilians there, you knew there were refugees, all sorts of refugees, but you decided to still drop a bomb on that refugee camp attempting to kill the Hamas commander. But you know that there are a lot of refugees, a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children in that refugee camp as well, right?
This is the tragedy of war, Wolf. I mean, as you know, we've been saying for days, move south.
Today, as a result of Israel's military operation, nearly 1.2 million civilians are sheltering in UNRWA premises. The agency has become the primary platform for humanitarian assistance to over 2.2 million people in Gaza, a platform on the verge of collapse. UNRWA is, as of today, still operational in Gaza, though just barely. Our staff are still operating health centers, managing shelters, and supporting traumatized people, some arriving carrying their dead children. We are still distributing food, even though the corridors and courtyards of our premises are too crowded to walk through. Our staff take their children to work so they know they are safe, or that they can die together. More than 130 UNRWA staff are confirmed killed in bombardments, most with their families. The number might rise by the time you read this. At least 70% of UNRWA staff are displaced and lack food, water, and adequate shelter. We're hanging on by our fingertips. If UNRWA collapses, humanitarian assistance in Gaza will also collapse. In my 35 years working in complex emergencies, I have never written such a letter, predicting the killing of my staff and the collapse of the mandate I am expected to fill.
On the 9th of October 2023, Israel declared a, quote, complete siege on Gaza, allowing no electricity, no food, no water, and no fuel to enter the Strip. Although the siege has been partially alleviated since then, with some aid trucks being permitted in since the 21st of October 2023, this remains wholly insufficient and well below the pre-October 2023 average of approximately 500 trucks per day. As the Secretary General has starkly assessed, the level of destruction in Gaza is now so catastrophic that, quote, the conditions for the effective delivery of humanitarian aid no longer exist. But even if sufficient supplies were permitted into Gaza, intense bombardment and hostilities, Israeli restrictions on movement, fuel shortages, and interrupted communications make it impossible for UN agencies and their partners to reach most of the people in need.
Yeah, a year ago I was also posting a picture of my bag or whatever it was, but now it feels sort of disgusting with what's going on in the world to use your platform. If you have one, if you really have a platform and you're aware of what's going on in the world, I don't understand why you still, let me talk for myself, I feel like I have a responsibility with the fact that I have so many people looking at me or listening to me listening, then I better use it for the better and not for my own fucking vanity.
We have failed you. This is the awful guilt we carry. We tried, but we did not try hard enough. We will go to Rafah, many of us, reporters. We will stand outside the border with Gaza and protest. We will write and film. This is what we do. It is not much, but it is something. It will tell your story again. Maybe it will be enough to earn the right to ask for your forgiveness. Thank you.
Since early December 2023, Israeli army attacks on Palestinian hospitals have only increased. The Israeli army has continued to attack and besiege hospitals and healthcare centers, to deprive them of electricity and fuel crucial to maintain effective functioning equipment, to obstruct them from receiving medical supplies, food and water, to force their evacuations and closure, and effectively to destroy them. The north of Gaza, without any functioning hospital for a week, has only 4 severely challenged, partially functioning hospitals available now. Israel has transformed Palestinian hospitals in Gaza from places of healing into death zones and scenes of bloodbath, death, devastation, and despair. Many hospitals have now become mere places where people are waiting to die.
Hamas and Islamic Jihad's heinous crimes shocked us all. They deserve firm, unambiguous condemnation. The victims and their families deserve our strong support and solidarity. Hostages must be released, and those responsible for war crimes must be held to account. There is never any justification for targeting innocent civilians. But the very same principle is true when it comes to Israel's response to crimes by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. You cannot cut food, water, electricity that are vital for the lives of over 2 million people who have been living in a blockade for 16 years. You cannot wipe out entire families, let a health system be destroyed, raze entire districts to the ground, refer to people as animals. You can't punish an entire population by preventing desperately needed aid from reaching them. International humanitarian law is clear. Atrocities from one side do not justify atrocities from the other side.
نازح تحت القصف؟ خايف؟ لا. وانت يا سومة؟ انتوا خايفين؟ عندنا بابا ورانا، يلا اسمع بسرعة. خفيف. خفيف يا بابا. خفيف. الحمد لله قدرت أطلعكم.
The Israeli army erecting the Israeli flag over the wreckage of devastated Palestinian homes, towns and cities, including in Gaza City's Palestine Square itself, and spurred on by calls from within the Israeli government and without to flatten Gaza and re-establish Israeli settlements on the rubble of Palestinian homes, is destroying the very fabric and basis of Palestinian life in Gaza. Israel is thereby deliberately inflicting on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life calculated to bring about its destruction.
Israel has damaged or destroyed an estimated 318 Muslim and Christian religious sites, demolishing the places where Palestinians have worshipped for generations. These include the Great Omari Mosque, originally a 5th century Byzantine church, an iconic landmark of Gaza's history, architecture and cultural heritage, and a place of worship by Christians and Muslims for over 1,000 years. Israeli shelling has also damaged the Church of Saint Porphyrius, founded in 425 AD and believed to be the 3rd oldest church in the world, alongside 2 other churches that have sustained direct Israeli fire. Gaza's Christians themselves have been targeted and killed by Israel in the very church compounds where they sought shelter.
But did you know what life was like in Palestine before October 7th?
I'm here today to speak the words of a wonderful poet called Dr. Rafayat Al-Arir, who, alongside his brother, his sister and 4 of their children, were slaughtered in a targeted attack on his sister's home. And I'm going to read these beautiful words that he wrote and had pinned to his Twitter profile since November the 1st. And they're very human, they're very heartbreaking, and I thought people should hear his words.
As shameful as it is that they intend, and they confirm this today, to go to Washington on St. Patrick's Day to hand Shamrock to Joe Biden. How could anybody do that? Demand that this government represent people, represent humanity, and stand with the long-suffering, oppressed people of Gaza and Palestine to stop this massacre.
Shadi Barut, 5. Bilal Nidal Hamida, 6. Jamila Ibrahim Al-Landani, 13. Hudhafai Yusuf Al-Hila, 16. Khaled Abdullah Al-Tabash, 3. Razan Mohammed Saad, 14. Rima Munir Alham, 10. Samer Rabi Habub, 13. Sondawan Abdel Nasser Al-Halisi, 2. Oday Sabir Al-Asari, 7. Amr Samir Al-Hamis, 17. Fayed Al-Dawi, 13.
We kind of, crass is not the word. There was a time that happened in the north of Ireland, and it was terrible for us. It ripped the fabric of that society apart. And now, 25 years later, with a lot of help from Bill Clinton's administration, there's a great Senator George Mitchell came over and spent many years trying to get people to talk. He devoted a lot of his latter part of his career to helping these two tribes meet and talk. For which we're grateful, because dialogue is so important at the moment. People don't talk to anybody, and you can see that's it's just put shutters down. And we all feel for these people, because the fabric of their life, and the bravery of people to stand up and say this is wrong, and we know it's wrong. What do you do? How do you stop the monster? And it is a monster. And then you see the effect of indiscriminate shelling on just ordinary families, and now we have the images of them running, these small children, these women and stuff. I mean, it's much bigger than happened in our life, but this is the same stuff of sort of malevolence and hatred and bigotry. It's horrible.
All the Weeper knows is rape and murder, said Yarwick. Once past the wall, the wildlings will have thrice our numbers, said Bowenmarsh. And that is only Tormund's band. Add the Weeper's men and those at Hardhome, and they will have the strength to end the Night's Watch in a single night. Numbers alone do not win a war. You have not seen them. Half them are dead on their feet. I would sooner have them dead in the ground, said Yarwick. If it please, my lord. It does not please me. John's voice was as cold as the wind snapping at their cloaks. There are children in that camp, hundreds of them, thousands. Women as well. Spear wives, some, along with mothers and grandmothers, widows and maids. Would you condemn them all to die, my lord? Brothers should not squabble, Septon Celador said. Let us kneel and pray to the crone to light our way to wisdom. Thousands of those who fled the battle were desperate enough to believe her. Mother Mole has led them all to Hardhome, there to pray and await salvation from across the sea. Hardhome is an unholy place, it said. Cursed! Even your uncle used to say as much, Lord Snow. Hardhome sits on a sheltered bay and has a natural harbour deep enough for the bigger ships afloat. Wood and stone are plentiful near there, the waters teem with fish, and there are colonies of seals and sea cows close at hand. All that's true, I don't doubt, said Yarwick, but it's not a place I'd want to spend a night. You know the tale. He did. Hardhome had been halfway toward becoming a town, the only true town north of the wall, until the night, 600 years ago, when hell had swallowed it. Its people had been carried off into slavery or slaughtered for meat, depending on which version of the tale you believed. Their homes and halls consumed in a conflagration that burned so hot that watchers on the wall far to the south had thought the sun was rising in the north. Afterward, ashes rained down on haunted forest and shivering sea alike for almost half a year. Traders reported finding only nightmarish devastation where Hardhome had stood. A landscape of charred trees and burned bones, waters choked with swollen corpses, blood-chilling shrieks echoing from the cave mouths that pocked the great cliff that loomed above the settlement. 6 centuries had come and gone since that night, but Hardhome was still shunned. The wild had reclaimed the site, John had been told, but rangers claimed that the overgrown ruins were haunted by ghouls and demons and burning ghosts with an unhealthy taste for blood. It is not the sort of refuge I'd choose either, John said, but Mother Mole was heard to preach that the free folk would find salvation where once they found damnation. Septon Celador pursed his lips. Salvation can be found only through the seven, this which has doomed them all. And saved the world, mayhaps, said Bowen Marsh. These are enemies we speak of. Let them pray amongst the ruins, and if their God send ships to carry them off to a better world, well and good. In this world, I have no food to feed them. John flexed the fingers of his sword hand. Cutter Pike's galleys sail past Hardhome from time to time. He tells me there is no shelter there but the caves. The Screaming Caves, his men call them. Mother Mole and those who followed her will perish there of cold and starvation. Hundreds of them, thousands. Thousands of enemies, thousands of wildlings, thousands of people, John thought. Men, women, children. Anger rose inside him, but when he spoke, his voice was quiet and cold. Are you so blind? Or is it that you do not wish to see? What do you think will happen when all these enemies are dead? Above the door, the raven muttered, Dead, dead, dead. Let me tell you what will happen, John said. The dead will rise again, in their hundreds and their thousands. They will rise as whites, with black hands and pale blue eyes, and they will come for us. He pushed himself to his feet, the fingers of his sword hand opening and closing. You have my leave to go. Septon Celador rose, grey-faced and sweating. Othel Yarwick stiffly. Bowen Marsh tight-lipped and pale. I thank you for your time, Lord Snow. They left without another word.
Here to stand in solidarity with the health professionals who've lost their lives in Gaza in recent weeks, and it's a really very large turnout today. Yeah, it's something that's very close to my heart. I've done some work in recent years for a charity called Medical Aid for Palestinians, and was in the West Bank in February. Yeah, I've sort of been supporting their work with the medical professionals in the occupied territories. Yeah, very troubled by them, and that's why I was interested in coming today. This march specifically is in support of healthcare workers, a lot of whom have lost their lives in the recent military action in Gaza. That's obviously makes the sort of future for the Gazan communities very compromised, and also in the immediate, it means that they're struggling to provide any meaningful kind of medical support for civilians who are getting injured there. So yeah, it's very troubling what's happening. Yes, I mean, I think all these things are a personal decision. I think it is it's a very heated time politically. It is it's a hard thing to stand up for, but I think I certainly feel very clearly that the issues around kind of basic international law, around how conflicts are conducted, are really important to highlight and maintain, because otherwise, and I think that this really affects security for both Israel and Palestine. Ultimately at some point this conflict will have to be resolved, and we're looking for a long-term solution to this issue. And I think breaking international laws or bending those doesn't help anyone. I'm not a politician, so I'm not here to demand anything. I think it seems clear that in order to be able to try and move this very protracted
political conflict on and to find a solution. The first thing that has to happen is the conflict needs to stop so that relief can be brought to civilians, that they can get food and water, medical aid. All those things need to happen in the short term, and then peace ultimately is the first step towards finding a solution, a political solution. Fighting is not going to fix this. The solution will have to be political. Oh God, I mean, it's such an overwhelming. I want to say I'm so sorry, and we stand in solidarity with them, and we see their suffering. There are a lot of children, so many families, so many civilians being affected by this conflict, and it's heartbreaking to see.
So we looked a bit at sort of Marsh Arabs, we looked at sort of Cameroons, we went all over the place and we found some wonderful totems. I also used the idea of the totems for the wedding of Khal Drogo and Daenerys, and I was trying to find a way to give it some kind of gravitas.